Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Sheviit. We're up to Perek Aleph, Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnah should be Le'ilui Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev, Menuchato Began Eden, Amen. The Mishnah today is going to continue its discussion of the requirement that a field has to have at least 3 trees in it for it to be considered a field of trees. We're going to address some of the conditions that apply to those trees. Now, Rabotai, just to refresh our memories, we're going to be discussing again the Bet Se'ah field. The Bet Se'ah field is a field approximately 6,200 to almost 9,700 square feet. The Mishnah begins, Shilosha ilanot shel shilosha anashim. If this Bet Se'ah field contains 3 trees that belong to 3 different people, and the Mefarshim point out that each tree, along with the plot of land that it's planted on, belongs to a different person. Now, again, if the Bet Se'ah field contains 3 trees that are owned by 3 different people, nevertheless they combine to form a field of trees, and you are allowed to plow the entire Bet Se'ah for the benefit of those trees. Because instead of viewing each tree as an individual tree growing on its own plot of land, we view the trees as if they all belong to one owner. Therefore, the field is considered a field of trees. Now, Rabotai, in order for a field to be considered a field of trees, regardless of if it's one owner or many owners, even if it's one owner, there has to be certain distance between the trees. The Mishnah is going to address the minimum distance now. V'kama yeh benehem. How much is the minimum amount of space that there has to be between the trees for the field to be considered a field of trees? Rabban Gamliel says, there has to be enough space for the cattle to pass through with their plowing equipment. And the Mefarshim explain, there has to be enough space between the trees to allow the pair of oxen, which are yoked together and pulling the plow, to pass between the trees. And this distance translates practically to 4 amot. And the reason for this, Rabotai, is because if the space between the trees in the field is less than 4 amot, the trees are not going to grow properly, and eventually you're going to have to remove them. Therefore, the field is not considered to have 3 trees and cannot be plowed. And the Mefarshim point out even more, because we learned earlier in Mishnah Bet, Mishnah number 2, that even if a field doesn't qualify as a field of trees, you could still plow the immediate vicinity of each tree and the extending 2 amot. Here, however, the halakha is different. Why? Because if the trees are too close together, they eventually will have to be removed, and therefore no part of the field is considered to be supporting the growth of a healthy tree, and therefore no area can be plowed after Pesach before the year of Sheviit. That is the end, Rabotai, of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav is going to begin a new discussion. In the previous Mishnah, we were discussing the laws of plowing fields of mature trees during the 6th year before Sheviit. There is an oral law, Alayev Moshe Sinai, that young trees, which we're going to refer to as saplings, they are treated differently. And later on in Mishnah 8, we're going to discuss how long a tree is considered to be a sapling before it's considered mature. But the Mishnah now is going to explain when a field of young saplings can be plowed in the 6th year, during the 6th year. If you have 10 saplings, 10 young trees growing throughout a Bet Se'ah, we are allowed to plow the entire Bet Se'ah for their benefit until Rosh Hashanah. Because unlike the field of mature trees, which you can plow only when there are 3 trees growing in the field, a field of saplings is a little stricter. In order to be considered a field of trees, it has to be at least 10 saplings growing there. And the Mefarshim explain, because although 3 mature trees draw nourishment from the entire Bet Se'ah of soil, saplings require less soil for their nourishment, and therefore less than 10 saplings do not require an entire Bet Se'ah. However, the Mefarshim do point out regarding a number of other halachot, we do consider a field of saplings to have the same halachot as a field of mature trees. And for example, both fields have to have a separation of at least 4 amot between the trees. Also, with regards to the sapling and the mature trees, if there are not enough trees in the field for it to be considered a tree field, you could still plow the immediate area until a deadline for that field. And the Mishnah continues to explain, we're going to explain that on the other hand, while a field of mature trees can be plowed only until Shavuot according to Bet Hillel, a field of saplings can be plowed the entire 6th year until Rosh Hashanah. Hayu asuyot shura umukafot atara. If the 10 saplings were not growing throughout the field, but they were growing instead in a single line, or they were surrounded by a fence, meaning the area enclosed by the fence is less than a bet se'ah, en choshin ela litzulkan. You can only plow them for their needs, meaning their immediate surroundings, like we spoke of in Mishnah Bet, which is the area immediately surrounding this young tree, can be plowed until Rosh Hashanah. And the Mefarshim explain, you are not allowed to plow the entire field. Why? Because if you were to plow the areas of the field beyond the line of the saplings of the young trees or outside the fence, that would look like you're plowing the field in order to prepare it for the next year, which is Shemitah year, instead of for the sake of these young trees. And that is, Rabotai, not allowed. So again, the point of this Mishnah was to explain that the nitiyot, the young trees, the saplings have a different halachot than the mature trees. The saplings have to have a minimum of 10 to be considered a field of trees. And if you actually have 10 to make it be considered a field of trees, you can plow it all the way until the 6th year, until Rosh Hashanah, until the 6th year ends, the entire 6th year. But by the mature trees, even if you have the 3 to be considered a field, you can only plow until Shavuot, according to Beit Hillel, like we said. And again, another distinction, like we said, is that the saplings have to have at least 10 to be considered a field of trees, whereas the mature have to have at least 3 to be considered a field of trees. That is the end, Rabotai, of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen v'Amen.